the opportunity to be here and hear your word. Help your word inspire us and make us better servants for you in the future. Amen. Okay, now we at this point Nehemiah has basically brought the people together, and if you recall, last week in chapter 9 we read this very lengthy prayer. And anybody remember what was in it?
And besides the history, the people were explaining that they had sinned.
Right. It's an entire litany, as you said, of the history and the fact of where, and basically, the prayer says, here's where we screwed up, and here's what happened to us, and therefore, we deserve what happened. But we're not going to do that anymore. Okay, that's what the prayer said. Now, remember what Nehemiah is really trying to do here, and what he's been doing through this entire book. He's got this wayward group of people that is now finally coming back together, and he's trying to put them together in something that would be the Jewish group that was there before. Okay, somehow he was trying to make them connect with each other and become a part of each other, and so on and so forth. So that's what he's doing. So what did the Jews agree in that after that prayer not to have their daughters do?
Well, not to intermarry
With who?
with people that were not Jewish.
Right. We talked about that, and that sort of flies in the face of some other things, but remember what his purpose was. His purpose was to establish the Jewish state as it was before. The original, when King David was on the throne, each of the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, well, actually, now they're debating whether it was really 12 or 13 or 11 or whatever it was. But the point of the matter is each one had its own territory, and Jerusalem was the hub. Okay, so what happened was after Solomon died, there was a fight among the heirs, and the tribes of the north became a separate country. So all that was left was the tribes of the south, and that was just, as it was known, Judah, which was the name of the son, and I believe a couple of others, and the Levites, who were, didn't have any land, but they were living there anyway. By the way, Joseph in the Technicolor and Dreamcoat is back at Beck Center, and one of our pastors, John Fancher, used to be at Rocky River for years. He is Jacob, and that is a strange show. You're going into it thinking you know what's going to happen, and I guarantee you it's not what you're going to see. It's actually quite good. And I didn't know John. I've known John Fancher for years. I didn't know he could sing. Man, can that man sing? But be that as it may. So now what he's trying to do is he's trying to figure out, who have I got left? Where did they come from? How can I put this whole thing back together? And would somebody like to read chapter 10, verses 34 to 36?
We, the priests, the Levites, and the people, have cast lots to determine when each of our families is to bring to the house of our God, at set times each year, a contribution of wood to burn on the altar of the Lord our God, as it is written in the law. We also assume responsibility for bringing to the house of the Lord each year the first fruits of our crops and of every fruit tree. As it is also written in the law, we will bring the first fruit of our sons and of our cattle, of our herds, and of our flocks in the house of our Lord, to the house of our Lord, to the priest ministering there.
Okay. This is another piece that he's putting back together. Remember, he says it's written in the law, it's written in the law, it's written in the law. how did they communicate what was written in the law to the people who were there?
And besides the prophet being up there on the platform.
He had to be up there on the platform telling them that this is the law, this is the law, this is the law. So now he's reinforcing that. He's saying, we're doing that, you're going to do this because the law says you should. And Ezra told you that, however many weeks ago. So what he's doing is now that it's kind of like what drug companies do. Drug companies create the disease. And once they create the disease, then they tell you how to fix it. Well, this is what Ezra and Nehemiah have done. They put the law out there, and now they're telling them, okay, now that you know what it is, here's what we're going to do.
So they're bringing food to the priests.
Right, that's right. That was the custom at the time.
And the firstborn, does that mean that they're going to serve with the priests, all the firstborn
So
sons?
they have to be blessed.
Oh, they just have to be blessed,
Mm.
okay.
So basically, so he's going to be doing this for the rest of the time now. Every time he has the opportunity to say, well, let's add this because it's part of the law. Okay? Now, here's another part of the law that he's going to add. Would somebody like to read chapter 10, verse 37 to the end of the chapter? And there's no names in it.
Okay, I will. Moreover, we will bring to the storerooms of the house of our God, to the priests, the first of our ground meal, of our grain offerings, of the fruit of all our trees, and of all our new wine and oil. And we will bring a tithe, I'm having a hard time reading. We'll bring a tithe of our crops to the Levites, for it is the Levites who cannot collect. That's tithes, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
In all the towns where we work. A priest descended from Aaron is to accompany the Levites when they receive the tithes, and the Levites are to bring a tenth of the tithes up to the house of our God, to the storerooms of the treasury. The people of Israel, including the Levites, are to bring their contributions of grain, new wine, and oil to the storerooms, where the articles for the sanctuary are kept, and where the ministering priests, the gatekeepers, and the singers stay. We will not neglect the house of our God.
So now he's...
Can you explain to me who the Levites are?
Okay. The Levites are the descendants of Moses' brother Aaron. They are
They're Jewish though, right?
they're Jewish, they're a separate tribe. And because they are all priests, or pretty much so, they are not allowed to own land. They had no land of their own. So they lived on the charity of everybody else.
So is that why they're bringing all this stuff to
They
them?
can't grow their own crops.
Yeah, yeah.
So the 10th goes to the church, so to speak, and the rest is to support them.
Right. And that's what tithe means, 10%. Now, this is kind of important, like Dave asked who the Levites. Well, I don't know how many of them there were around. Well, as it turns out, in a later chapter we can read all their names, but I'm not going to. But the point of the matter is that somebody has to care for them, and so the law says that somebody has to care for them. So here's another piece of the law. He's saying, guess what? This is what we're going to do. Why? Because we're supposed to.
Did they wear something different so people knew they were Levites?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what, yes.
I mean, how are you going to be able to tell somebody?
They wore robes or something?
Remember any of you ever see the movie Ten Commandments?
Years ago.
Don't you remember how they figured out how Moses was a Hebrew? Because the cloth that he was in the water was the cloth of the Levite. And so that's how they knew. And now, that's a little historically inaccurate, but who knows? I'm not, I make a movie. Look at remember how that thing began? It starts out, this is based on the writings of Josephus, whatever, the Roman historian for whatever, and then in big letters, and the Holy Bible. So he took a little liberty with it, but basically that's what that means. So again, now another part of the law has come in, take care of the priests and whatnot. By the way, later on when they offered animals for sacrifice, it was the priests who got the meat. And that was true of just about everybody, even the pagan temples did the same thing. Okay, so now, the next thing that he has to do, or he feels he has to do, is figure out who in the heck is gonna live in the city and who in the heck is gonna live outside the city, because you need people in the city to defend the city. Make sense? So I need somebody to read chapter 11, starting at verse 1 and ending right before it says from the descendants. It's only 4 verses.
I'll do it. Now the leaders of the people settled in Jerusalem, and the rest of the people cast lots to bring one out of every 10 to live in Jerusalem, the holy city, while the remaining 9 were to stay in their own hometowns. The people commended all of the men who volunteered to live in Jerusalem. These are the provincial leaders who settled in Jerusalem, now some Israelites, priests, Levites, temple servants, and descendants of Solomon's servants lived there in the towns of Judah, each on his own property in the various towns, while the other people from both Judah and Benjamin lived in Jerusalem.
Okay? So he's saying, look, you know, we got this big city now, and I don't have enough people living in it to make it work. So what do I do? Well, in David's days where that would be called a draft. You know, you cast lots and say, okay, well, why don't you move? And notice it says they commended the people who agreed to do it. Because they're giving up land and everything else and moving into a city. But again, once you have a city, you have infrastructure, you gotta take care of it, you gotta defend it, you gotta keep the streets clean, you gotta do all these other things. And you can't do that if nobody lives there, or not enough people. Now, the rest of this, you'll see 2 columns there, and these are the names of all the people that got picked. And you can tell with the detail in which he puts that. All right, so then we're gonna go all the way down to verse 20, and there's a lot of names in there, so I'm gonna read this part. I'll be nice to you. The rest of the Israelites with the priests and the Levites were all in the towns of Judah, each on his ancestral property. Okay, we understand what that means, right? That's why Bethlehem is the house of David, that is his ancestral property. The temporal servants lived in the hill of Ophel, and Ziva and Gizpah were in charge of them. The officer of the Levites in Jerusalem was Uzzi, son of Bani, the son of Hashabiah, the son of Methaniah, the son of Micah. Uzzi was one of Aspeth's descendants who were singers responsible for the service of the house of God. The singers were under the king's orders, which regulated their daily activity. So here you've got another group that's part of the temple that they have to take care of. Okay, notice in our book, he's brought up the singers many times. So obviously they didn't just sing on one day a week, they're living there all the time. Pethathiah, son of Mezalel, one of the descendants of Zerah, son of Judah, was the king's agent in all affairs relating to the people. So it sounds like this gentleman is the prime minister, if you want to call it that. And when he says son of Judah, what does that mean?
From that tribe.
From that tribe. The tribe that Jerusalem sits in. As for the villages with their fields, some of the people of Judah lived in Kinnerath, Arba, and its surrounding settlements, in Dibon, and its settlements in Jekbazeel and its villages, in Jeshua and Moladah and Beth Pelet, in Hazar Shalu and Beersheba and its settlements, in Zilkag and Manana, its settlements, in En-Rimmon and Zorah and Jarmuth, Zanoth, Adullam and their villages, in Lachish and its fields, and in Azekah and its settlements. So they were living all the way from Beersheba to the valley of Hinnom. I'm trying to find a map somewhere that would show you how big an area this is. Now it says the descendants of the Benjaminites from Jiva lived in Michmash, Ajia, Bethel and its settlements, and Antoth, Nob and Ananiah, and Hazor, Ramah and Gittaim, and Hadid, Zeboim and Nebalat, and Lod and Ono in the valley of the craftsmen. Some of the divisions of the Levites of Judah also settled in with the Benjamins.
I wish you would have let me read that.
So, like I say, there's not maps
Are you
of,
able to say the first one?
now, there's no maps in this Bible, but, you know, I'm gonna try to find a map that shows where all of these places are. So basically, that's the way people lived in those days. What would happen, and it's no different than colonial America when you think about it. What would happen in colonial America? They'd build a fort somewhere, and everybody else lived around it on their farms. And whenever there was a trouble, everybody would run into the fort. Well, that's what's going on here. All of these folks are gonna, you know, he knows where they all are now, so he knows how many of them are gonna run into the fort in case there's trouble. So, the point of the matter is, he's pointing out where everybody's at, by tribe. Again, he's trying to build, it's like a jigsaw puzzle he's putting together. And, by the way, which you know, the Benjaminites were named after, which brother? Benjamin was the, but as far as the racial relation to the rest of them. Yeah, he was the youngest. He was the one that they snuck the cup in and they got, you know, when they tried to leave and got caught. So, I'm not gonna go through the rest of chapter 12 there with all of those names. Now, unless somebody else wants to do it, I really don't care.
What's that?
The point of the matter is that he's taking an accounting, and this was very not unusual in those days. The book of Numbers, its whole purpose was to keep track of how many, you know, people were in the nomads that were done by Moses over time. It gives you the number at the beginning, it gives you the number at the end. So it tells you what happened to them in between, as far as when the numbers went up and went down. So this was a society that believed in documenting everything. Now, does that mean that everything all these names are correct? I have to assume so. I wasn't there. And since you're all younger than me, you weren't there either. So anyway, that's what's going on here. Now, when you go to chapter 12, verse 27, an interesting thing is going to start to happen. Again, it's another piece of this that is important for us to think about. What's happened now is he's built the wall. He's got people settled where they want to be settled. He's got people in the city. He's got people documented around the city. All of these things have occurred. So now in verse 27 of chapter 12, they're going to do what any reasonable group would do. Now that we're done with it, let's dedicate it. I mean, they didn't probably have a ribbon and a cut it, but they'll probably do something pretty similar. So, if somebody would like to read verses 27 to 39, it's a little. It's just the bottom of the page and a quarter of the way up the next page, and there are names in it.
Sure, I can read it.
Keep ready, Renee.
At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with the music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. The musicians also were brought together from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of the Nephathites, from Beth El, and from the area of Geba and Asmareth, for the musicians had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. When the priests and Levites had purified themselves ceremoniously, they purified the people, the gates, and the wall. I had the leaders of Jerusalem go up on top of the wall. I assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. One was to proceed on top of the wall to the right toward the dung gate. Hoshea and half the leaders of Judah followed them, along with Azariah, Ezra, Meshullam, Judah, Benjamin, Shemaiah, Jeremiah, as well as some priests with trumpets, and also Zechariah, son of Jonathan, the son of Shemaiah, the son of Mathina, the son of Micaiah, the son of Zachar, the son of Asaph, and his associates Shemaiah, Azarel, Meliel, Gilal, Mea, Nethanel, Judah, and Hanai, with musical instruments prescribed by David and the man of God. Ezra, the teacher of the law, led the procession. At the fountain gate, they continued directly up the steps of the city of David on the ascent to the wall, and passed above the site of David's palace to the water gate on the east. The second choir proceeded in the opposite direction. I followed them on top of the wall, together with half the people, past the tower of the ovens to the broad wall, over the gate of Ephraim, the Jeshana gate, the fish gate, the tower of Hananel, and the tower of the 100, as far as the sheep gate. At the gate of the guard, they stopped.
Okay. So, describe what's going on here.
Well, for one thing, I think it's kind of funny because we talked about that some Christian churches early on didn't believe in music.
Yeah.
But the Jewish people had music and singing for many, many years.
So
It's a very important part of celebrating.
Why
That
didn't
is-
they believe in singing?
Some of the Christian churches
They
early
did not
on
believe in singing.
singing.
There was a guy,
That's funny.
there was a reformer by the name of Zwingli, who was in the same group as Martin Luther and John Calvin. He was a reformer in Switzerland, as most of them were. I don't know why, but most of them were. And Zwingli honestly believed that any statuary or anything ornate in the sanctuary was distracting. And he also believed that music was distracting. So when his followers would take over an old cathedral, they would take all the statues of Virgin Mary or whatever was in there and throw them in the street, bust them up, and they would smash stained glass windows with stories on them because that was distracting, and so on and so forth. So that was their view of it, and not to worry, those sermons in those days were about 2.5 to 3 hours. He made sure that you understood the word.
So where the Jewish people are singing and having music and they're really celebrating these events.
Well, you know what the Psalms were, right?
Yep.
The Psalms were
Most of the
songs.
Most of those.
They would sing these things as they would come into worship, and they would sing these things as they walk from place to place. We put them into words, but remember David, who was considered the choir master, wrote most of them,
Yeah.
and he actually put music to them. The original Christian church was a music-driven church. So then Zwingli comes along and throws things a little bit off. Luther, on the other hand, loved music. He wrote some. Some of the Mighty Fortress is Our God is one of his. And there are quite a few others that he wrote. So he believed.
Wesley's wrote a lot.
Yeah, the Wesley brothers wrote, and the Methodist Church wrote lots of them. So there was these two views of the world. I mean, this church, for a Presbyterian church, is very unusual. It has stained glass with a message. You go to John Knox, there isn't a single stained glass window with a message in the building. I don't think there's one in Bethany either. But then you go to Old Stone, and not only is there a message on it, they hand you a tour guide, and you stop at each window, they're numbered, and it tells you every detail about the message that's on that particular window. Of course, but then again, Old Stone was not built originally as a Presbyterian church. It was built as something else.
His bill is what?
It was built as something else.
Oh, okay. I've
Which
never
is-
been there.
Oh, it's a trip. They also have the Lincoln Pew in there, by the way. If you come in during the week and you're nice to them, maybe pay them a few bucks, they'll let you sit in it. You know why it's called the Lincoln Pew, don't you? When the Lincoln train was going back to Springfield after he was assassinated, it stopped here in Cleveland, and the closest church to the train station was that one. So that was where the Lincoln family sat, right in the front, and they have left it alone ever since.
Wow.
So you can sit in the Lincoln Pew.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
That and the Church of the Covenant, both of them are completely alien to a church like this one. Church of the Covenant has all kinds of neat stuff in it. It's built like a Catholic cathedral. It's the one that does not have a pulpit. It has a one of those things with, like in the Catholic Church, where the pulpit sticks out of the wall, and you got a spiral staircase to go up to get to it. Well, it has one of those, and it has these wood carvings, Dave, that I don't think there's a human alive that could redo them. I mean, they're all they are flawless.
Well, I think it's interesting too with the choir. They say, I don't know how many churches do it, but Pierpont Church, you have a room you're in, and you walk in when you're ready to sing. There's a door, you walk in.
Right.
So you get the choirs in there practicing near where the sermon's going to be.
Well, yeah,
And they just walk right in.
well, in John Knox, they process every week.
So, but that's not a procession, they come in from the back. and
Right,
they're-
right. Yeah, there's a lot of churches that are built that way.
Now, this
Later-
church, there's nothing like that, so the choir has to come in and,
Well, that's not the real problem though when you're a pastor. The fact that you don't have a real room back there
yeah.
comes into play when one event happens in the church. It doesn't happen very often, and you will hear about it from the mother of the bride.
Leona,
Yeah,
do you
nowhere to go in
remember,
the back of.
do you remember who the pastor was when he took the Sunday school group around to each one of the windows and explained each one? That was back when we had enough kids to.
Right.
Back then,
It wasn't Pastor
we had
Stevens.
Steve, we had
He was-
Reverend Seawright.
No, that was a part-time. He wasn't here very long.
Oh, so it wasn't Pastor Stephen.
Before that, I'm
But anyway, it was interesting to everybody because,
Well, I think they should do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as they're there. I mean,
You know, I think you should explain things. I think that's why people don't know what's going on anywhere, any church they go to. People never explain nothing to them.
the church I grew up in Illinois, had some beautiful stained glass windows, and they had to give you a program explaining, because there was so much stuff on them that you had, oh, that's this, and this relates to this, and the other thing about stained glass windows, by the way, is that you're very lucky. When stained glass windows get old, they implode. And what happens is, in order to fix them, back in the 90s, it was $2,000 a window.
Oh, I believe that.
And Bethany had 62 of them.
Oh, I believe that.
So but the point of the matter is that there was the early church, Renee is right, was a singing church. They sang all the time. And they sang, when they gathered, they sang on the way to places, they sang in squares, basically they believed in music. Notice it says they found particular types of instruments. During what you just read, it mentions there's a particular instrument related to somebody. Who?
I know they talked about lyres.
Yeah, but they also said musical instruments that were. I'm trying to find it again because it was there.
See.
It turns out that it mentions in there about the instruments that David would have used.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, David
Music
was.
of cymbals, harps, and whatever that word is. Lyres. Lyres. Okay.
I believe that's how they pronounce it.
That's
Yeah.
what it says. It says cymbals, harps, and lyres.
Yeah, do we know the difference between a harp and a lyre?
Not really.
I don't know what it is.
Like music Major, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lyre you hold like this, and it's got, what, about 5 strings or something on it?
Something like that.
So it's the one that has the ends come out like this, and you play it like this.
Oh,
It's a lot smaller.
What's that?
Smaller than a harp?
Oh, yeah.
Much smaller. I mean, you hold it in your arms,
Oh.
whereas the harp goes way out here, and you're like this, and it has lots of strings. And they used to say, there's Garrison Keillor did a thing about parts of an orchestra, and he talks about how the violins think they own the orchestra and all this kind of stuff. They, as far as the brass section is concerned, the rest of the orchestra just wishes they would practice somewhere else. Gets to the end, and he said, the perfect marriage of musicians would be for the groom to be a percussionist. Because a percussionist has to do what they're told at the right exact time. And they said, the bride has to be a harpist. And why? Harps are very big, so they gotta stay home to learn how to play, see? So that makes them a homebody. That was his logic. But we had, what was her name? Jocelyn Chang. She, I don't know, weighed about, 110 pounds maybe.
Yeah.
But she had this harp that she would bring around. It was on a special cart that was built for it. And she would wheel this thing in. And they used to use her on Christmas Eve sometimes. And back in the 80s, she charged $2,000 a night.
oh, wow.
Well, when there's only one of you and every church
right.
wants you, you can do that.
So what it says here too is, with musical instruments prescribed, like a prescription, I guess, prescribed by David.
That's the point, see?
And I think it too, we gotta figure out, like, where is David? Has David been born,
No,
where-
he's long gone.
Yeah, so they're talking about stuff from the past,
Exactly. So
Yeah.
again, this is
yeah.
in order to get the tradition back, you gotta bring it in, see?
Mhm.
So now, here is all these people running around, and so what is going on here at the top? We mentioned, say, he brought people to the top of the wall. Well, it's kind of like the Great Wall of China, there's a walkway that goes through there.
Okay,
So he's putting them up where people can see
Everybody
them,
can see 'em, yeah.
and hear them, and see that they're for real.
now what is the Tower of Ovens?
That's a good question, I'll have to look that one up.
Is the Tower of Ovens a place where they do some kind of ceremonial stuff? I would guess, I don't know.
Well, again, it's, there's a lot of gates and whatnot that used to be there, that they built the wall pretty much in place. So the gates that were there when, the city fell are pretty much the same ones that they had when they finished it. But the point of the matter is, he put people up on top where you could see them no matter where you were. And he kept moving them along the top of the wall. So it's like, it's like a parade.
Yeah,
Everybody that, oh, wait a minute, whoa, and so basically, what he's done is he said, all right, we were inspired to rebuild this thing. God wants us to rebuild this thing. We rebuilt it, so now we're going to sell it, and we're going to let God know that, yes, we're happy and we're thrilled that we got this done, and we thank you for your help, and so on and so forth. So each of these people that we read about had a particular role in this. They just didn't go out and find somebody. These people had a particular role. What I found interesting, where did they find the musicians? Where were they living? It tells you in there.
says from the region around Jerusalem, from the villages of this place and that place. They had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem.
So the musicians were living in enclaves together.
Had some wild parties.
I don't know about that, but
Oh, just kidding.
the point of the matter is that, again, he knew where they were. And unfortunately, that meant that the musicians fraternized with other musicians, which is okay, I suppose, and the priests fraternized with other priests, and that was not all that uncommon in those days. You had a caste system,
Didn't they assign singers?
Oh, yeah.
Well, what if you didn't know how to sing?
Well, they wouldn't assign you if you didn't know how to sing.
Well, generally, I don't know how it was back then,
I can't
but
sing.
nowadays, there's people who are just singers in the Jewish church. They're called cantors,
Yes,
C-A-N-T-O-R, and that's their heritage, that they are a cantor.
right. In fact, you all saw The Jazz Singer, right?
There's 3 different movies of the jazz singer.
The original one with Al Jolson. What was Al Jolson's father's job? He was the cantor.
Yeah, he was.
And he assumed that his son would become a cantor too.
You had to
And
be
instead, he became
Christian.
a pop musician, is
And
what he
entertainer.
became.
And a Christian, and
Yeah.
a Christian.
Yeah, so, but basically that's, the fact that all of this is going on and they're celebrating and they're doing all this and they're trying to get everybody in the town involved with this. In other words, he didn't want to have people who just moved in and just sat down and didn't pay attention to what was going on. He brought what was going on to them.
I guess they thought it was in the blood. If you were
Yeah.
a singer, then your children would be good singers too. I don't know.
Well, that's part of it too, but the reality of it is that the only place that it would invite a non-singer to be a singer is a small church choir. Gordon Blasius, our senior pastor, in order to get a second service, he had to get a choir, so he volunteered to sing in it. And when he first started singing, he was not very good. He eventually became better. But you could hear him up there. And also, whenever we had a youth group one time that did the Holy City for Easter, and they made sure that there was a chancel choir member in every group, so that we just basically went off of them. But I think the more important story about all of this is when I was in the 8th grade, I had a music teacher who was supposed to be teaching singing and would go through the aisles with the guys because their voice was changing, and she would declare who the non-singers were. And you were not allowed to sing for the rest of the semester.
Oh, really?
Guess who was one of them?
What's that?
Guess who was one of them?
Who?
You.
No. Nope. I was not one of them.
I was in a glee club and I can't sing.
Remember, I was younger, my voice hadn't changed yet. If it had been a year later, I would have been. But no, I actually had to sing in front of the entire assembly. We sang Stout-Hearted Men. But anyway.
I joined it not realizing that you had to.
But anyway, the rest of the chapter goes into another, the rest of what was going on there. So if somebody could read verses 40 to 47, I appreciate it. There's a few names in there.
You stumble-
Well, do your best you can.
Stumble along.
Just,
The 2 choirs that gave thanks then took their places in the house of God. So did I, together with half the officials as well as the priests.
Oh, don't read the list. Okay. Go down to where it says the choirs.
The choirs sang under the direction of Josiah. And on that day, they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away.
Keep
Go
going.
42nd.
At that time, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the contributions, first fruits, and tithes. From the fields around the towns, they were to bring into the storerooms the portions required by the law for the priests and the Levites. For Judah was pleased with the ministering priests and Levites. They performed the service of prayer God and the service of purification. as did also the singers and gatekeepers, according to the commands of David and his son Solomon. For long ago, in the days of David and Asa, there had been directions for the singers for the songs of praise and thanksgiving to God. So in the days of Jerubbaal and Rehabiah, all Israel contributed the daily portions for the singers and gatekeepers. They also set aside the portions for the other Levites, and the Levites set aside the portions for the sons of Aaron.
So now he has put the house of God back up on the pedestal it was before the city, before the city was taken, okay? And notice how he keeps saying, based on long ago. He's the one that's saying, well, based on long ago this happened, so I'm going to have to explain to everybody what went on long ago. I know what happened. They don't necessarily know what happened. And he keeps bringing up names of David and his son Solomon. Who built the temple? The original one.
Herod.
No, way before him.
Solomon.
Solomon did. David did not. He wanted to, but what did God tell him?
Before his
So
son.
he had to help Solomon do it. He didn't-
Right. David was told, you got better things to do. We'll let somebody else do it. And the temple, the original temple that was there, had every ornate possibility you could put in there. I mean, there was gold leaf and gold on everything, and there was huge timbers they had to bring down from Lebanon because they had no wood. And all the the fine linen and the curtains and everything else. So when the city was taken, where do you think they went? They went and grabbed every piece of gold and ornate jewelry they could out of that building, and because that's where it all was. And as far as the Babylonians were concerned, none of that had any meaning at all to them. It was just valuable. So now he's trying to put value back into this building. So they basically, I'm not sure, no one's sure what the condition of the temple was when they went and they came back. So it may have been, the walls were there and nothing was inside. It may have been a little bit deteriorated or something where they had to finish it, or may have holes in the wall. No one really knows. But the point of the matter is that, he's elevating the house of God now to be the center of their society again.
What was the Ark of the Covenant at this time?
They don't know. That's one of the things that disappeared during all of this. And that's why Indiana Jones is out trying to find it.
So it's not in a building somewhere now.
No, it's,
It's
well, no, wait a minute, the movie says it's in a warehouse in
Yes,
Washington
in a warehouse.
DC, hidden.
Missing.
It's hidden, so you can't find it. No, seriously, there are drawings of the Ark of the Covenant that are around, so we know what it looked like. But at this point, nobody knows where it was, and heaven knows what happened. Somebody may have melted it down for all I know.
The guy that was Indiana Jones in a way, the real guy, they had a thing on Antiques Roadshow the one day showing all the stuff he said he found. And he said some of it was real, some of it wasn't.
Mhm. But the whole point of the matter is that when we get to the story of Advent here, right afterwards, when Jesus was born, they had to go to the temple, only place, so that Jesus could be sanctified. You had to do it within a certain number of days from when the child was born. Also,
8 days, right?
what's that?
8 days.
Something like
Days or
that.
something like
But
that,
is
yeah.
that also When you say sanctified, does that mean you were going to be crucified or just blessed? I mean,
Yeah,
crucified.
it's like,
Circumcised.
yeah, well, yeah, that whole, whatever that routine involved. But basically, that's the whole situation here. Everything that happened in the temple with its centerpiece. That's why the festivals, everybody came to Jerusalem, because it's kind of like, the Muslims, in their lifetime, they have to go to Mecca at least once. And they face Mecca when they pray and so on, because that was their center of faith. The temple was no different. Any priest within 25 miles had to serve a certain number of days in the temple. And now there were a lot of them, so it wasn't all that big a burden. But when we read about Zechariah a little later, you'll find that it says he was doing his duties in the temple. That's what that meant. And so this whole thing was like the centerpiece of everything. That's why Herod, when he took over, rebuilt the temple as ornately as he did, because he knew that if he did that, the Jewish people would like him. I mean, he's only half Jewish himself, but at least he knew enough to do that. There's a part of the temple still standing. What's it called?
The Wailing Wall.
The Wailing Wall.
I think that's what you said a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the Wailing Wall is supposedly the only part of the temple that still stands. And it is very sacred to the Christians and to the Jewish people. In fact, the Jewish people go to the Wailing Wall with their prayer books and put their hands on it and pray. Also within, I don't know exactly, but within a few hundred feet of that is the most revered Muslim temple in Jerusalem. So you've got this small area with all kinds of pilgrims running around virtually every day. But
Hello.
Sorry, Steve needs to see you. Steve needs to see you.